Dobrý den, přátelé. Jmenuji se Markéta Černoušková a jsem zakladatelka organizace Moudrost-soucitu, která podporuje šíření moudrosti, učení a terapeutického přístupu doktora Gabora Maté. S blížící se návštěvou Česka nám doktor Maté poskytl rozhovor, který bude následovat za chvilku, ale dovolte mi na začátek pár úvodních slov. Pro mnohé z vás jistě není zapotřebí Gabora Maté představovat, takže jen krátce. Je to v Maďarsku narozený kanadský lékař, který zasvětil 40 let svého života zkoumání souvislosti mezi traumatem, stresem a duševními i fyzickými nemocemi, závislostmi a dalšími neduhy, včetně těch kolektivních a společenských. Píše knihy, byl o něm natočen film Moudrost traumatu a je po celém světě vyhledávaným řečníkem a odborníkem. Jeho nejnovějším bestsellerem je Mýtus normálnosti, v němž ukazuje, jak to, co považujeme za normální, je ve skutečnosti pro spokojený život a naplňování lidských potřeb neprospěšné, ba toxické. Gabor pracoval s drogově závislými a duševně nemocnými, reflektoval své vlastní trauma, i ta, která způsobil vlastním dětem, a díky tomu všemu ví, o čem mluví a píše. Já si jeho práce nesmírně vážím, protože je protnutá soucitem. Bez soucitu není žádné uzdravování možné. Pracuji s jeho terapeutickým přístupem soucitné dotazování, anglicky compassionate inquiry, a organizovala jsem i jeho loňská vystoupení v Praze. Letos jsem ho pozvala znovu a znovu je mi ctí, že Gabor přijal a 16. a 17. října povede v pražské Lucerně konferenci a workshop. Jejichž tématem nebude nic menšího než rodičovství a výchova dětí, protože vývojové dětské trauma se nevyhnulo takřka nikomu z nás a je to právě naše zraněnost, respektive to, jak se s ní vyrovnáváme, co určuje naše chování, vnímání své hodnoty, naše vztahy, myšlení a naše emoce. Gabor Maté nám s moudrostí a laskavostí sobě vlastní pomáhá naše zranění pochopit, uzdravovat a nalézat soucit. Soucit nejen k okolí a ostatním, ale hlavně k sobě samým. A to je to nejtěžší. Gabor ukazuje, že na cestě uzdravování nejsme jen individuálně, ale i kolektivně jako kultura a civilizace, která tak nějak zabloudila a zapomněla, co je přirozené a zdravé. Čím více nořím do jeho učení a moudrosti, kterou předává se skromností a pokorou, a zdůrazňuje přitom, že není žádný guru, tím víc v sobě kultivuju onen soucit, cítím zjemnění a otevírám svoje srdce. Čím víc se učím být soucitnou léčitelkou, tím hlouběji se dostávám ke kořenu svého vlastního traumatu a smiřuju se s tím, že ho asi nikdy úplně nezhojím, protože je tak hluboké, že je vepsané v mé buněčné paměti od prvopočátku. Učím se, že úzkost, stud a depresivní a závislostní sklony nejsem já, že se s nimi nemusím identifikovat, ale že si s nimi můžu vytvořit vztah. Když se vynoří, soucitně je opečovávám jako miminko, kterému se toho kdysi nedostalo, a o tom je ta cesta uzdravování. Být se svou bolestí. A jak Gabor často cituje Budhu, lidské utrpení vzniká, když utíkáme před svou bolestí. A tak také čím dál tím víc chápu, co se to vlastně děje ostatním lidem a naší společnosti jako celku. S Moudrostí soucitu pořádáme online i živá diskuzní a terapeutické skupiny a chystáme i další aktivity, které vás mohou na vaší vlastní cestě nasměrovat a inspirovat. Více se dozvíte na našem webu moudrost-traumatu.cz, kde jsou i informace o soucitném dotazování a dalších terapeutech. A já jsem nadšená, že si na nás Gabor udělal čas a s blížícím se termínem své návštěvy nám poskytl rozhovor. So welcome, Gabor. Good morning.
Good evening, I should say.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Gabor, thank you very much for joining. I would like to introduce to you my colleagues from a little NGO that I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah.
These three women are wonderful women who are helping me in a little NGO called The Wisdom of Compassion, which is promoting your work and compassionate inquiry in the Czech Republic. And I will now ask the girls to mute themselves and and stop the videos. They'll be there just as a technical backup for the recording. And we'll start the interview. So thank you, girls.
Okay.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
So hello again, Gabor. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation to come to Prague again this October. And this video, this interview is to promote that event. And with regards to that, I would like to ask you some questions. And the first question, which disappeared now, and now I'm getting it, is you devoted like good half of your life of the study of trauma and its connection to physical and mental disease, but also the state of our society. You bring completely new paradigm and lens to understanding the world and also the possibility of healing. And this has been an enormous amount of work. And how have the past 30 to 40 years changed your life? What was it like to be Gabor Maté 30 years ago? And what is it like to be Gabor Maté now?
Well, the mostly how the 30, 40 years changed my life is that I'm 40 years older, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more in my 40s. I'm just 79 now. In my 40s, I was quite frustrated. I felt there was something I was meant to do, but I'm not doing it. I felt I have some potential that I haven't fulfilled it. I felt as I was not being myself. All that is much more complete now. You know, I no longer feel frustrated. I've done what I think I came here to do, which is to shed some light on the nature of human suffering and to help people move past that suffering. And I think I've done that. I think I've done that effectively, certainly for a lot of people. I'm much more aware of my own self, my own body, my own emotions, my own thoughts. I'm much less driven by unconscious dynamics. There's more peace in my heart. I wouldn't mind having the body that I had 40 years ago, but I wouldn't want to have the consciousness that I had 40 years ago, or the lack of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also, you know, I don't mean to boast in any way, but it's almost impossible for me to travel anywhere in the world, whether it's Europe or, you know, Turkey or Greece, as I've just recently, even small Greek islands, or where somebody doesn't come up to me to thank me for my work, you know. So I know that I've had an impact, which is very satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. What a wonderful legacy to have. And now, is there still anything, any theme, any topic that you would like to work on and bring more awareness to, or is there anybody that you would like to collaborate with on something? What are your plans?
You know, I'm not somebody who makes plans very much. I just kind of do what comes up. Well, The Myth of Normal, my book, was published in North America and in the English world a year ago in September, and it's being published in 34 countries. That took a long time to do. It took me about 10 or 12 years to do the research and to do the writing. And but it's not like I planned it. It's just something I wanted to do. My next collaboration is actually with my son, Daniel, with whom I wrote The Myth of Normal, and we're doing a book together called Hello Again, a fresh start for parents and their adult children. So it's to help refresh the relationship between adults and their parents, or older parents and their adult children. That's the next project. Other than that, I'm doing a lot of traveling. As you know, I'm coming to Prague. I'll be going through Eastern Europe in October. So I just keep doing what I do. And I don't make plans too far ahead, actually.
Wonderful. And I actually watched one of the videos with your son, Daniel, and it was really so heartwarming and so eye-opening to see the path for the parents and adult children on how to tackle whatever went so-called wrong.
Yeah.
And so this is a wonderful plan ahead. Well, as much as you say you don't make any plans. And picking up on that, I have to say I'm surrounded by people. I kind of live in a bubble of people who find your wisdom, or the wisdom you're channeling, and your books groundbreaking and really potentially healing, and this potential for a more compassionate world. However, there is also criticism sometimes. So you live, well, I assume that there is certain prominence and fame around you, but also this criticism by people who just, whose paradigm, whose outlook on the world is simply different. How do you cope with that?
Well, you might be aware that in, I think, late March, I interviewed Prince Harry, a lot of criticism, a lot of hatred, and that was tough to take for a while, but I got over it. But in terms of criticism, I don't hear much intelligent criticism. And by intelligent criticism, you can have it. I'm sure you could make an intelligent critique of my work, but I haven't seen it. What I've seen is critique of my work from people who don't understand it, So if you're going to criticize me, first of all, understand what I'm saying and tell me why it's wrong. But if you want to criticize me for something I didn't say and thoughts that I didn't have, I don't pay much attention, So was upsetting about that whole Prince Harry episode was how personal the attacks were. They were just vicious and personal. I actually really like criticism. I like intelligent debate. I like exchange. I learn a lot that way. But again, most of the time that I see criticism, it's from people who don't have the capacity to understand. And I think it's because they're in denial of their own trauma. So there was an article recently in a big British newspaper which mentioned my work, and it was called The Cult of Trauma. But the cult of trauma is taking over the mental health world. Well, first of all, I only wish that trauma was taken over the mental health world, but it isn't. Most mental health professionals, psychiatrists, I dare say, whether in Hungary or Czechia or England or North America, don't know anything about trauma. So I only wish I was taking it over. Yeah. Secondly, it's not a cult. It's a point of view based on a lot of research and a lot of clinical experience. So if you're going to criticize it, understand it first,
Yeah.
That stuff I don't pay much attention to.
Yeah. Speaking of journalists, there was a review of your new book, The Myth of Normal, here in Czechia, because it's already been published in Czech language. It's
nice.
available, and people are just really hungry for it. And there was a review in a kind of leftist magazine, which was titled Gabor Maté, the myth of normal. Compassion with those who suffer, but irreconcilable to the system. And I wouldn't call your attitude irreconcilable. I think irreconcilable is not what you are. You are compassionate. What would you say?
Well, actually, I agree with the headline. Compassionate doesn't mean compatible. Compassion is an attitude where you really want to understand people and not judge them and feel their suffering, you know, and respect them. That's compassion. I personally don't think that I in the book I do talk about politics, but the book is not a political manifesto, you know, and I actually don't. I'd like to see changes in how we approach mental health and how we approach child education, how we approach childbirth, how we approach parenting, how we approach work, how we approach community. But I don't think that what I'd like to see is really compatible with a globalized corporate world. I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because I think the interests of a materialistic world is to make as much profit for as few people as possible.
Mm.
That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
According to Time magazine, in an article published 3 years ago, the richest 1% gained $50 trillion at the expense of everybody else.
Mm.
Well, that's going to create all kinds of social problems and health problems internationally. It's going to create climate change. We're seeing the impact of climate change these days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a healthy climate is compatible with a system that magnifies profits of oil companies. So I can be compassionate, but the headline, unfortunately, is accurate. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm wrong, somebody needs to show that to me. Somebody needs to show me that this system is really going to do something about climate change. So far, I haven't seen the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's going to show that this system really support young families so that they can raise healthy children and take the stress off the family, I'd like to see it. So far, I haven't seen it. So,
Okay.
So compassion is not the same as compatibility.
Okay. Fair enough. Now, the Prague event is going to be about developmental needs of children, parenting and childcare. And in your book, The Myth of Normal, you are redefining what is normal. And you are outlining how unhealthy and toxic our society and culture are. So can you make that link? How is the unhealthiness and toxicity of our culture and society influencing individual parenting and childcare? How come that there are parents so disconnected from what is natural and healthy for their children?
Right. So there's two ways to look at what is normal. There is the usual way we look at it is things that we used to, we consider them normal. But there's a lot of things that we're used to that are normal in the sense that it's what happens, but that doesn't make them healthy or natural. So what is normal in our society, in today's society, is completely abnormal from the point of view of human evolution. So what if I told you that a zebra is an animal that walks around in a small circle the whole day, and it eats every once in a while, and then lies down most of the time, and then walks around again in a small circle. Would that be accurate? Yes, it would be. If I studied the zebra in a zoo.
Mm-hmm.
But if I studied the zebra out on the savannah, or where the zebra lives, that would be completely inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
So what is normal in an artificial environment is completely abnormal from a point of view of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And same with parenting. So throughout evolution, I'm talking about through millions of years and hundreds of thousands of years. For example, children were with their parents the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we evolved as a species.
Mm-hmm.
Today, parents barely see their children the whole day because they both have to go to work to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come home, they're stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're alone because the tribe, the community is not around to support them.
Mm-hmm.
That means that very stressed parents are parenting kids who they don't see most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then interfering with the relationship between the parent and the child is the technology.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kids spend much of their time engaged with technology, not with nature, not with real life, not with the plants and the flowers and the animals and the earth and the trees and the outdoors, but with this artificial gadget that is designed to make them addicted,
Mm-hmm.
deliberately designed that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's toxic. It has a negative effect on child development. Also, the way parents are taught to parent. If you look at indigenous cultures, they tend not to hit their children.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of countries, it's still okay to hit kids. I don't know what it's like in the Czech Republic, but hitting children until very recently, at least, was pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
It's very harmful, but it's very common. It's considered normal.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of studies have shown how toxic it is. And I could go on and on and on. But there's a lot of practices, parenting practices, that are considered normal today that actually are harmful to children. And not because the parents don't love their kids. Parents really are dedicated and love their kids. It's that they're so confused and they're so stressed.
Right. And you have developed compassionate inquiry. It's a therapeutical approach, and I happen to be a CI, compassionate inquiry student, and soon to be practitioner. And I also founded a little NGO called The Wisdom of Compassion that promotes your teaching and compassionate inquiry. And now what I would like to ask you is, sometimes people say, oh, this training only takes a year, this can't be enough, or this is just another combination of solution-focused and body therapy with a new label. And I know from my own experience, and could you say how much more there is to compassionate inquiry and how profound and transformational the training is for us students, and it can be for our clients?
Well, first of all, the critics who say that it's only a year long and it's not enough, they're absolutely right. It is only a year long and it's not enough. But the people who take our courses are professionals already. They've already had all kinds of training. They're coaches or psychologists or counselors or physicians, sometimes psychiatrists, body workers, and so on. So yeah, nobody can take the course who's not already a professional. So they're quite right, but it's beside the point. It's not meant to be an all-inclusive training that this is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
It's for people who are already been trained to work with people, to give them a different approach to working with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's about. And we've had about over 3,000 students now in 80 countries. And most people, not everybody, but the vast majority, like 98% of people who take the course, find that it really changes how they approach their clients.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's designed to do. And furthermore, as you've taken the training, you know this, that people come into the program thinking they're going to learn some kind of a therapeutic technique. And to their surprise, they find that they spend the first 3 months working on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also about a transformation of the self.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it for everybody? No. Does it work for everybody? No. Does anything work for everybody? No. It's just a particular approach to help people get very quickly to the core issues that are influencing their lives. It's not the only good training. There's, as you know, we have guest speakers, some other kind of approaches, other kind of trainings. We want our students to be familiar with the whole range of practices. But I think it's unique in the sense that it teaches people to ask questions of their clients that help the client discover the truth in themselves very, very quickly, usually.
Yeah.
And so it's not just another program. It's amongst other programs. It's a program that's potentially and practically helpful to a lot of people. If you don't want to take it, don't take it, you know? And just because you've taken it doesn't mean that now you become a genius, you know, like it depends what you bring to it and how you make it work. But again, a lot of people find it very deep. Now, by the way, when you say it's a year long, it's a big commitment because everybody who's taking it are working professionals. And every week they have to spend, what, 8 hours or so?
Mm-hmm.
I've never taken a training, so I have no idea. But it's about 8 hours, isn't it, a week or so?
Yes.
That you have to spend. So it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
For people to find 8 to 10 hours a week. It's a very intense program. So that's what I can say.
All right. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. And anyway, perhaps just last question. Is there anything, this transformational work that you have done over the last 40 years, is there anything that it has actually taken away from your life? Like something that you would regret, something you lost?
It's not the work that's taken it away. It's my relationship to the work. So there was an article, maybe you heard me talk about it. I mentioned it at a recent CI session. There's a nurse, I think in Australia, she was working with dying people. And she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of Dying People. And so when people are dying at the end of their life, and she was a palliative care nurse, which meant she worked with cancer patients. And these people would be dying not of old age, but of terminal disease. And amongst the regrets, the top 5 regrets, one of them was, I wouldn't work so hard. And the other was, I wish I had spent more time with family, more time with personal pursuits. I wish I had not neglected my friends. I could have done the work without being addicted to it, without having to spend so much time with it, without depriving time for my own personal spiritual growth, or depriving time from my family life, from my children, from my marriage relationship. So that's a regret, and I don't want to, at the end of my life, still have that regret. And I can't change the past, but I'm certainly saying no a lot more now to invitations and so on, and really making decisions. I'm still working a lot. I enjoy it, but I'm much more conscious about what I choose to do and what I don't choose to do. So yeah, but again, it's not the work. It's my relationship to it. It's my compulsive relationship to it. That was the problem.
Okay. Well, Gabor, thank you very much. And I think that this is a wonderful way of ending this interview. Thank you very much for still working very hard. Thank you very much for accepting all our invitations for the interview and for the event. But I am now letting you go to your own personal stuff so that you can enjoy more and regret less. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Markéta. I'll see you in a few months.
See you in a few months. Bye-bye.
Bye.